Propaganda is defined as information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. When people think of the term propaganda, they often associate it with exaggerated forms, such as that used by communist dictators or in times of war. A popular view of propaganda is Hitler's way of enticing and hypnotizing his followers into carrying out unthinkable crimes against humanity. However, what people fail to notice is that here in America, propaganda is quietly integrated into our everyday lives. In their article, Propaganda Model, Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky discuss the ways in which mass media have gained control of all the information we as a common people receive and how the information is projected upon us as propaganda. To help better understand and visualize just how we have become exposed to such propaganda, Herman and Chomsky summarized their ideas into a model consisting of 5 filters.
What the propaganda model focuses on is the inequality of wealth and power that dominates the media presented to a mass audience, and the multi-leveled effect that it has on almost every spectrum of that society. The giants that control this money and power are able to filter out all types of news and entertainment that they deem to be fit. By doing so, they are able to maximize profits both for themselves and other private sectors, minimize disparity, and get private interests across to the public. How they are able to do so is described in the propaganda model through 5 filters. These filters are 1. The size and concentrated ownership along with owner wealth of mass media firms. 2. The advertising as the prime income source of the media. 3. The reliance of the media on info provided by the government, business, and experts, also known as sourcing. 4. Flack as a means of punishing and keeping the media in line. 5. Anti-communist ideology as a national religion and control mechanism. All these filters control what we see and hear in any media output. What is deemed acceptable is printed, broadcasted, and uploaded as clean, and the residue is simply swept under the rug.
The first filter in Herman and Chomsky's propaganda model, size and concentration of the mass media, pertains to the fact that mass media in the United States are controlled by few dominant media firms. In other words, while it may appear that there are many various news outlets in which we receive our information, these outlets are in reality mainly operated by an exclusive group of top-tier businesses. As a result, these businesses hold the key to all of the information we as the general public receive. This enables them to comb through the information, picking and choosing which news they want to relay and which news they want to conceal. These media giants often report the news that suits and furthers their interests and hide the news that may impair their image or the image of an ally. In addition, they often alter the news they choose to broadcast into a biased standpoint, allowing them to control our thoughts and opinions on a topic. Today, the Big 10 media giants include AOL Time Warner, General Electric, AT&T, News Corporation, Walt Disney Company, and Sony, among others. These companies are continually buying out other smaller businesses and constantly increasing their power.
The second filter, known as advertising, is the prime funding source for a medium. Advertisers are no better than the small group that controls the mass media because advertisers are a profit-seeking entity themselves. A medium, having the intention to keep profit margins as high as possible and looking for a way to keep production costs low, must attract these advertisers. These advertisers pay for production costs, but also get their product across to a wide audience, so they make up for their losses quite easily. Since competition to get advertisements is so high, and because advertisers want to get as big of an audience as they can, smaller mediums tend to be cut out. By keeping the size of ownership as concentrated as possible, the same ideas are being shared, and there are very few to directly challenge it. When ads are placed in higher revenue media, they attract more people for that product, so they are shopping, in a sense, for their own customers. Because more people that see them, the more likely they are to buy from them. Between the media giants attracting to profit and advertisers paying to profit, the consumer is caught in the middle, being a puppet because they are just paying. The next time you see a Jordan's Furniture commercial on Fox and you think about buying something from there, remember that you are falling right into that.
The third filter, sourcing mass media news, is very much about where to find the most important and eventful news there is. Because of this, the mass media has to know exactly where and when they can find such news. This type of news can be most often found at high levels of politics and economics, such as the White House on a national political level, or big business banks on an economical national level. These are extremely important to the credibility of news stories because government and corporate sources also have the great merit of being recognizable and credible by their status and prestige, says Chomsky and Herman. In addition, by going to credible sources, it costs media outlets less money because they do not have to verify whether or not the information is accurate. Also, by using official sources, the government is involved as well as big corporations, and the media is manipulated into delivering propaganda. By doing so, they are controlling and regulating it and denying anything that goes against the government agenda, which is a violation of constitutional rights. Another important part to sourcing mass media news is that much of the media in the United States claim to be objective deliverers of the news, while in many other countries, news stations do exactly the opposite, interjecting much more in the way of opinion into daily news. Much of the stories we hear or read about in the news in the United States are shaped and recreated because the media are often manipulated into delivering us propaganda.
The fourth filter of propaganda is known as flack. Flack is a negative response to a medium. It can range from comments on a program to letters of complaint to Congress, phone calls, and things of that nature. Flack is primarily used to discredit smaller organizations that go against what would be favorable to more established powers. Although they constantly attack mass media, the media treat them with respect. Those analysts and experts you see on TV are usually sponsored and show how the power of sponsorship can be present in anything in society. Flack has been used to smear legitimate information and make it seem almost irrelevant and non-critical. Take a look, for example, at global warming. The first findings were the most accurate because it wasn't blown out of proportion. Scientists have been studying for years and gathering information about it. The naysayers, namely the big corporation executives, dismissed global warming as a naturally occurring phenom. When things became evident that it was not normal, suddenly global warming became overly exposed. Movies, shows, and headliners of newspapers were all part of global warming. Look at the Day After Tomorrow movie, depicting catastrophic events through awesome special effects.
Meteorologists are at a loss to explain what is causing this weather.
Are you getting this on camera?
Now, what you see is happening
There is
now.
so much damage.
Czechia was battered by the largest hailstorm on record.
Weather experts yesterday slamming into the
In New Delhi, it's snowing.
That's a tornado! Yes, a twister in
This is just massive.
We have live coverage.
There is a wall of water coming towards New York City. Everybody, get out of here, people!
Regardless of how cool the movie looked, it was oversaturated and unrealistic. There were specialists on TV claiming how the same scientists that came out about it weren't taking global warming seriously enough. A lot of these scientists had their work discredited very fast and their names were tarnished. If there wasn't such an overexposure and the information that was presented to the public was kept purely scientific, it would have gone against the higher agenda and profit-making scheme revolving around specifically oil. But since it was overdone, the hype and fear around it began to die, and people began to have doubts, and soon the big controversy fell silent.
The final filter in Herman and Chomsky's propaganda model, anti-communism as a national religion and control mechanism, refers to the power media corporations hold in instilling anti-communist thought into our belief system. To America, a capitalistic society made up of various social classes, communism is the enemy. Communism aims towards equality, and therefore is a major threat to the American elite who own and control the media corporations. As a result, any glimmer of communist thought is immediately attacked and refuted by the mass media. This holds tight constraints over what we as Americans are allowed to think and feeds us an ideology of anti-communism that we don't dare to challenge.
So, how can we fight this ever-present propaganda? There is no one cure-all magic trick that will eradicate all the filters. However, there are a few possible solutions that can help dilute the level of filtering we see in media. For one, publicly funded independent television and radio stations can do battle against the first two filters, ownership of medium and advertising, because ideas are spread around much more evenly and diversely. And it is a publicly funded medium, which means there is little to virtually no advertising. Without these two, the primary focus is on what is actually vital, different ideas and different views on issues. Nonprofit organizations could be another combatant against the filters because they have no financial or personal gain from exposing the information, except satisfaction in doing so. As we have seen before numerous times, money and power is what drives the model, so by taking that out of the equation using possible solutions as mentioned, propaganda won't be so prevalent in what we see and hear in our daily lives. The public must take it upon itself to be more informed and not allow themselves to be controlled by a small group of people who only have their own interests in mind. Otherwise, we will keep going through the same mind-numbing bombardment of filtered-out news and entertainment.
To broadcast into a biased standpoint, allowing them to control our thoughts and opinions on a topic.
Yeah! Do we get that?